We have speaking today for the second time, but this time it's going to be better than the first time. Xenia Muntean is the CEO and co-founder of Planable, a content review and marketing collaboration platform used by over 4,000 teams at brands like Jaguar, Land Rover, Viber, World Food Program. Speaking today on the Underdog story, how to build a successful startup against all odds. Please welcome to Xenia Muntean.
Thank you so much. I hope audio is good, everything's good. Okay, so guys, I'll share my screen with you right now, and yeah, we'll get into it. Okay, good. So thanks a lot for joining in again on the session for anyone who's here listening to me. And yeah, thank you a lot for making time to see my presentation again. So I wanted to talk about the troubles we all go through when we're building a startup. And we're all familiar with this very sad statistics that about 90% of startups fail. And we at Planable had a bit more obstacles on top of that 90% statistics. And I wanted to talk about that. You know, what are the odds you have to overcome as a startup whenever you're building a company? And I actually had a lot of trouble coming up with the title for my session. I knew I wanted to talk about the odds we had to overcome as Planable, but I had a very hard time making peace with the word successful. I had to fight my imposter syndrome and literally negotiate this word with myself, convince myself that we're pretty successful for an early stage startup. So here's the proof I actually gave myself, and I hope it works on you too, and you keep listening to our story and enjoying our story. So here are the several hints we're building a successful product and company. And I'm going to start with the first one, which is about Techstars. So about 3 years, actually about 1 year after winning the startup competition at Xenia, we applied for Techstars, and it was the third or the fourth time applying, and it was, the lucky one. We got into the accelerator and received an investment of 120,000. And at that time, the tool was in beta. We had very few users and none were paying. We were hoping to start having paying users, and less than 3 years after Techstars, we have more than 700 paying customers, and we actually started selling enterprise plans recently. We also made it to the Forbes 30 Under 30 list when I was 25. It was a huge morale boost for the entire team, and we're still getting good energy from it, even though that was about a year ago. Speaking about the team, we're 15 people and still growing. At the moment, we have about 7 more positions open. And yeah, something else that I wanted to highlight in terms of success factors here at Planable was that this pandemic actually validated our product once again. Efficient collaboration is the heartbeat of a business, and even more important now than ever. So we actually continued growing throughout the pandemic, and even more than that, we reached break even during these times. We did pause recruitment, but we didn't have any layoffs. No decrease in MRR or major cuts in spending. We are actually now more secure than we've ever been as a company, and we have enough cash in the bank for years and years of runway. The point of all of this, the point of this slide is not to brag, but to give you an update on Planable since I first spoke on the Xenia stage 3 years ago, and also to defend the successful word in my title. And also to set the stage for what I'm about to say, that this didn't come easy. On paper, the odds were never in our favor. For this 5 recognition points that I mentioned right here, we had about 8 gaps to fill and overcome, 8 obstacles to overcome. So this is how we are actually beating the odds. The first one is that we are an extremely young team of co-founders. And this was a big obstacle for us whenever fundraising, whenever selling to enterprise customers. One of my co-founders was actually 19 when we started working on Planable. And whenever somebody tells me we're young, my favorite thing to say is, who else can build a collaboration tool for social media if not some millennials? And my favorite compliment ever that I received is, you're in your 20s, but you talk and think like you're in your 50s. Jokes aside, being a super young business owner comes with a lack of experience that I learned to handle very carefully. For example, I always show up extremely well prepared and have my answers ready. I prepare extra slides for potential objections whenever pitching investors. And I always follow up after a meeting. In the end, they are not even going to notice you're just a kid if you're super professional. Also, I use my age as my advantage to get advice from people more experienced than I am and add very experienced professionals in my network. Every seasoned professional out there wants to support a young rookie because they see themselves in us. So be proud of your age and how much you achieved so far. Use it for press coverage. You'll often find my name next to female CEO at 23 label, and I don't even mind. The second obstacle, actually, just like what I told you right now takes me to the second bump on the road. The fact that I am a female CEO in Eastern Europe. And my solution to this was owning it and not even thinking about it. I have been asked several times how it feels to be a female in tech. Truth is, I'm not thinking too hard about it. I know there must be very subtle ways I have been discriminated in the past, but most probably I was naive enough to not even notice them. There are articles out there that help women adjust the way they pitch or answer investor questions to counteract their prejudice. I think this is a fight not worth having. I don't want an investor on my board that I had to extract from the 50s and bring him out to the modern world. Instead of trying to counteract the issues, I leaned into the opportunities. We got into the RGA Can Startup Academy, which is dedicated to female entrepreneurs. I won the Female Role Model of the Year at the Central European Startup Awards. I'm part of Alpha, which is a community for women founders started at the OIC, and many other opportunities. Believe me, there's plenty of them out there. Like any of you, we started, like many of you, we started from an Eastern European country. We spent a lot of time abroad, but we came back, not just because I love this part of the world, but also because it was a solid business decision. We got the best talent with a budget so lean that Silicon Valley startups can't even imagine. But on the other side of the coin is that you are indeed a bit isolated from the major tech hubs. Now with coronavirus, probably less and less, or probably doesn't feel so much. My advice for you in a post-coronavirus world is to travel a lot if you can. What we did and still do when possible is to get grants for your conferences, travel for events where they cover plane tickets, accommodation. And I have a lot of people in San Francisco, London, and even Bucharest to thank for letting me sleep on their couches. And whenever I travel, I try to get the most out of it. If I'm in London for a week, I usually have at least 20, 30 meetings that week just to make the most out of it. So lean budgets and lots of travels. There's a big advantage to being based in Eastern Europe. There is a lot of research showing entrepreneurs with accents are less likely to receive investment funding. There is a glass ceiling for non-native English speakers. And no matter how open-minded Western countries are, strong accent will end up being an obstacle when integrating in their culture. And I did feel that on my own skin. So being aware of my Eastern European accent, trying to improve it, practicing a lot on it is the only way to go with this. And yeah, not sitting on it, being very mindful of the accent I have, but also not beating myself up too much, and always remembering that Google's CEO doesn't have an American accent as well. We started in Chisinau, Republic of Moldova. 2 of the 3 founders finished local universities. 1 dropped out at 19 to build Planable. We're building a startup in a world with Ivy League founders. We don't have any Harvard or Stanford to back us. So what we did is attended alternative universities such as Draper University. We're not ex-Google or ex-Facebook. So I emphasized a lot on my previous business experience, the fact that I built a marketing agency at 21 and I had clients such as Coca-Cola. So my message is to build your own pedigree while building your own product, getting into awards, certifications, things like Forbes 30 Under 30 or any other awards you can get yourself into, winning startup competitions such as Texelvanias. Every opportunity that places you next to the big fish is one to be taken in serious. We had no previous experience in building a startup, but that is also a great opportunity to build experience you need for your own business. So what we did was we got ourselves into 2 accelerators. One is Spheric and Cluj, and another one that we went through is Texas in London. So we're continuously surrounding ourselves with more experienced founders and advisors than ourselves. We read a lot. I remember, especially in the beginning, we devoured YC Startups School and all the resources they have. We had almost no funding. So we're super mindful of our money and our cash flow. The team is in Bucharest and Chisinau for a period of time. We, the founders, were probably the lowest paid team members. We offered equity to our first employees. I learned a bit of bookkeeping, a bit of finance, a bit of legal, a bit of compliance. I already knew design. So the trick with this is to do it yourself as much as possible. And ask for discounts for whatever tools you're using or for startup credits. Many companies out there like Amazon, Microsoft, Azure, MongoDB, Mixpanel, Intercom, they offer startup credits or even a year for free for startups. And the last obstacle we had to overcome was the fact that we landed in a pretty mature market. There are already tools with history in our space. So what we did was to create a new category from the start, just build a niche and plant a flag in it. We started building a tool that a handful of people really, really loved and then scaled from there. We're not trying to build a tool that's a jack of all trades and master of nothing. While the team should be very, very versatile, the product should be very niche. So I guess the silver lining to all of this is being very self-aware of the obstacles and plan around them. Just because you started having some customers or some traction, it doesn't mean your problems have vanished. So it's better to accept your flaws and work 10 times harder to overcome them than to ignore them. And I guess the second silver lining to all of this is keeping in mind that you, your product, your team, your customers are never perfect. So never stop learning, never settle, never stop innovating the product, yourself, the team, and the industry you work in. So that's all for my session. Thank you everyone who joined in. If there's any questions, I would be happy to take them.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm curious to hear more when you talk about accents, especially. Are you referring to just the American accent, or do you, or in the UK, would you say it's just as prominent there as well?
If there's an issue with having an Eastern European accent,
because you're talking about the United States, I was wondering, yeah. Have you noticed anything similar in the UK, or is just your experience mostly in the US?
No, I think with native English speakers specifically, I'm not sure if in Australia that would be a thing as well.
I'm sure it would be. I'm sure it would
yeah,
be.
but I think, and I'm not sure if it's like with all accents and if there's levels of biases regarding different accents.
Yeah.
But the Eastern European feels like is the one that is probably one on the lower end of acceptance.
No, it's interesting to hear you say that, because I never really put too much thought into that. I would say there's definitely probably some unconscious bias, because I think over 75% of Americans at least have never left the country. So there is a bit of kind of I don't know what the right word for it is, but something that's maybe a fear of the unknown, a little xenophobic, but not necessarily like that. But it's very interesting to hear that perspective.
I know it's not intentional. It's probably very people might not even be aware of it. But it is, I agree with you. It's just different than what they've been used with.
Yeah, and just to point out, on top of, like you said, Google was founded by Russians. I think they're one of many. I mean, Spotify, which has gotten huge in the U.S., is Swedes. So I think there is probably, hopefully, each year as it passes, more and more acceptance of kind of ideas and people than accents. But I appreciate you saying that, because I was just curious.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, well, thank you for doing this again. I'm glad we got to do it. And
thank you, Trevor.
And so we will see you soon, hopefully next year.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay. Have a great time at Xenia, and bye, everyone.
Bye, thank you.